and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. My name is Daryl Grove. I've got ID. I can prove it. And joining me is a man who's trying to divide 41 by 3. His name is Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello. It's 12-something. It is... Oh, no, it's not. I was wrong. It's 13.666 repeating.
There we go.
Yep.
Recurring, right? Recurring.
Recurring. Whatever you want to go with.
Is this a weird British-American thing we found?
Probably. Yeah. Or maybe I'm just wrong. Who knows? Relegation promotion has really thrown me off. So
to give listeners a peek behind the curtain, I did tell Taylor before I hit record, get the calculator out on your phone.
And it was useful.
So the reason for that is, so we're going to answer listener questions today, by the way. Just going to set this up. Some of them US men's national team related, some of them all over the place, some of them Daryl and Taylor related.
Yep.
Kind of nervous but interesting to answer those.
Ideally.
But we're going to start with some news.
Yeah.
And the news today is, as reported by Simon Evans for Reuters, he reported that CONCACAF, the council, has voted to implement the CONCACAF Nations League starting in September 2018. What does that mean, Taylor?
It means that we won't have friendlies anymore, basically.
Kind of. We'll have fewer
That's the simplest way I can put it, because
Yeah.
I keep saying friendlies and you keep correcting me too.
Yes.
Competitive fixtures
Because
now.
that's kind of the point,
Yeah.
right? What this means is, this is exactly what UEFA are doing with the UEFA Nations League. We're essentially going to mirror it over here in CONCACAF. I like to refer to it as an actual geographical region. Over here in CONCACAF. When people ask me where I live, I say CONCACAF.
Yes. I think we're going to do it until South America wants to join.
Yeah. Then
we'll combine.
But CONCACAF is going to essentially take the 41 member nations, split them into 3 different tiers, hence the 41 by 3.
Yep.
And then in each tier, there'll maybe be, as I understand it, a few like 4-team groups. So you have almost like a group World Cup group stage looking thing. And then you'll play competitive games, 4 points on the FIFA international dates that previously would have been used for friendlies.
Right.
At the end of the group stage, the top tier nations will have like a playoff among the winners to see who's the champion of CONCACAF. Everyone else will have promotion, relegation. Pro Rel is coming to the United States, just in international form.
Yes. Yeah. And then I think to go further into the format really quickly, basically it isn't just, I think the way I had initially understood the UEFA Nations League was that it was just going to be sort of a league, that it would be...
Like one giant league, like the CONMEBOL World Cup qualifying.
Yeah, sort of. Essentially, you'd have like 8 groups, or like 8 teams in the top tier. They'd all play each other home and away. After 2 years or a year or whatever, whoever was on top was like the nation's champion. Or whatever it might be. And it's actually what they're going to do, at least in UEFA, is they're going to have like the September, October, November international dates.
Yep.
That's where they'll play like kind of small group stage games, like probably groups of 4 is what we're thinking.
Yeah.
And they'll have like a playoff in the spring in those friendly dates, right?
Yeah, in early June.
There we go. So it sounds like maybe that's what the CONCACAF is going to do as well, where they'll have those tiers, but then they'll split them into groups.
So we have no details, right? We only have sort of this vague announcement because they haven't hammered out the details yet. They have just under a year, or less, right? Because you want it maybe before September 2018, you want to figure out what everybody's doing.
Yeah.
But what this does mean is that instead of just having sort of FIFA dates where the US just has to fill it like however they can, we'll have competitive games, as in games 4 points against CONCACAF opposition.
Yeah.
We're going to assume that even despite hex results, the US will be in the upper tier, right? So we'll be playing against... maybe Mexico, Costa Rica, Honduras, Panama, but it might be that then it's seeded across. So we could be in a group with, let's say, Jamaica, Panama, and I don't know, maybe Trinidad.
Haiti or somebody like that, yeah.
Yeah, if Haiti make the top tier, they may not. Let's say Canada, Jamaica, and Trinidad.
I think what I'm banking this on is the idea that if you do go with groups, you could do a top tier of 8 teams split into 2 groups of 4, but that then leaves a lot of teams in the lower 2. So I do think it would be more likely for them to do 12 teams in the top tier, which means 4 groups of...
This is why I introduced you as the man trying to divide 41 by 3.
Yeah, but even then, that doesn't actually... Really, the easiest one would be 4 groups of 4, which is 16 in the top. So maybe it will just be like the top 8 teams.
I think maybe just a couple, because if we're honest about CONCACAF, right, there's only so many quality teams. The Hex usually has a team that finishes bottom by a distance. Then there's quite a big mid-tier, or a mid-sized mid-tier of teams like, with all due respect, say, Canada, who aren't terrible, but can't realistically expect to qualify for the World Cup. And then you have a lot of smaller nations down the bottom, right? And again, with all due respect, like Antigua Barbuda or St. Kitts and Nevis, and those type of really smaller Caribbean nations. And one of the ideas for this, it isn't really to benefit the United States. It's to benefit those smaller nations who get dumped out of World Cup qualifying really early, don't have the resources to play a bunch of friendlies, don't have any competitive games. So they go a long, long time between competitive games. Now they're going to have this CONCACAF Nations League to play in and something to play for, because they can go from the third tier. If they can finish top of their group, they go up to the second tier, and there's so on for everyone else.
Yep. I'm still stuck on the math, though.
No, don't worry about it. Don't try and work it out. We spend the whole show doing math.
We will, but this shows you the rigidity of my brain, and that I haven't adapted to the 2026 World Cup, because I was like, but 4 groups of 3, if you need to have 4 teams advance to play in like a final round, you don't have that. You have to have 6 teams. Or you could just flip it around and do 4 groups of 3.
Yes.
And then you've got it. So I could see that happening as well.
That's true.
Either way, I think you're going to end up having the top tier having competitive games against other CONCACAF opposition, which I think if you're looking from the United States perspective, anytime you go on the road in CONCACAF, that will be useful experience, and it will be competitive games, so you can get youngsters competitive games away in in like Central America, in the Caribbean. That's always going to be difficult. And then I think for the bottom tiers, the big issue there has been
more games.
Exactly, because for smaller federations, it's difficult to schedule friendlies, and it's difficult to pay the expenses that surround friendlies.
So there was a line in the Reuters article that was essentially that CONCACAF would make some funds available to make sure that teams can travel and get to these games and make them happen. That's maybe my favourite part of all this.
I mean, and that's
not from a US perspective, but just from a CONCACAF like growing soccer perspective.
Well, from a perspective of that's why FIFA exists, is to help like develop and grow the game in areas that it's not like currently being developed in.
Well,
so that's what it should be doing.
CONCACAF also seems to exist to make certain people
very wealthy,
a lot of money. But it's nice to see something that isn't specifically for that. We hope, unless there's a terrible.
But I genuinely do think that this is a smart alternative way of facilitating growth, because as we've talked about before, there aren't always great checks and balances, and there aren't always great
sometimes great checks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was going to say there are great checks.
I was
in the
spelling
sense,
it with a Q.
Yeah, so was I. In the sense that you'll get what's the famous story? Like Jack Warner got millions of dollars to build a soccer complex in Trinidad, and then he mowed an area and put up 2 goals, and that was the $10 million or $2 million or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So
allegedly,
allegedly, whatever. Jack Warner can take us to court. That's fine. But you won't have that, basically. I mean, you'll still have that sort of development, but basically what this does is crystallizes that, no, St. Kitts are playing a friendly. We're going to help pay for that friendly. So
they're playing a competitive game. This is the point, that these become competitive games because points are on the line.
But my point is simply that, it's subsidizing them being able to play those games, as opposed to here's some money, hopefully you actually invest it and don't just kind of spread it amongst your executives. Now it's here's money, but you're using that to pay for the hotel so you can play this friendly so your league can get better. Okay, so let's look at this.
Let's look at this from a United States perspective. I can see this splitting into 2 camps. There'll be people who are like, yes, more competitive games, because there's kind of a wilderness between World Cup qualifying where there's no points on the line. I think I fall into that camp. Then there's the other part that is like, no, we shouldn't be playing CONCACAF opposition. We should be going and playing friendlies in Europe and playing against Brazil and playing against Germany and trying to make ourselves better. So I want to tease out sort of the nuances of those two viewpoints.
Okay. I am somewhere in between. I think I used to be closer to this is a bad idea, because I'd rather us play friendlies against more difficult opposition. I think I'm slowly coming into the other camp, though.
Okay, that's interesting. Why is that? Is it because the US failed hard in CONCACAF very recently, and therefore we actually need some more practice there?
That's definitely a big part of it, but I think it's also the word that we keep going back to is now you have competitive fixtures. I still want to call them competitive friendlies, but I take your point. Yeah. But against, you'll have that against CONCACAF opposition, which is a thing we've talked about in the recent unpleasantness, that maybe we don't have enough experience going on the road to CONCACAF opponents. But I think the flip side of that is also true, that if you go and play Germany's C team, you might beat them, but I don't know how much that actually prepares us. You might go play Brazil, but you know that Felipe Coutinho is going to have a bad back suddenly, and Gabriel Jesus might be a little bit sore, and Neymar suddenly has a mysterious bruise that keeps him out of the game. So you don't always have the guarantee that you're going to play.
Especially if it's his sister's birthday.
True. So then you don't have the guarantee you're going to play the best opposition.
Yes.
So that kind of defeats the purpose.
And there is a difference when points are on the line, when it really matters, because we could be playing against, US, the way we've played recently, there's a danger that the US either doesn't finish top of a group and gets to compete for a CONCACAF championship, or gets toward the bottom of a group and we're competing to not be relegated to the second tier of CONCACAF in the CONCACAF Nations League. So there will be points on the line. There will be things to play for, and I think it will raise the whole thing. The other point is UEFA are doing the exact same thing. So all those international dates where we were thinking about maybe going and playing friendlies against European opposition, they're not available anymore. They'll all be playing each other in the UEFA Nations League.
Exactly. So what we ended up calculating out was that there'll be the one international date in March.
Yeah, at least according to. So we haven't seen the CONCACAF calendar because it's not been set, right? We've only just got this news today. The UEFA Nations calendar, at least according to a website we looked at called Wikipedia. The games we played, 2 games in September,
for a minute. I was like,
2 in October, 2 in November,
9
none in March, which is the free FIFA international date, and then the playoffs will be in June 2019.
Yeah.
So that leaves March as the open FIFA international window where we could theoretically organise a friendly against, say, England.
Yep. Yeah. And I think so. You've got that aspect of it, and I made a joke earlier, but I do think that maybe this is sort of CONCACAF's long goal is to get South America to say, hey, we would maybe like to be part of that too, because
they don't have enough nations to do it, right? There's only 10 CONMEBOL nations.
Yeah, that's part of it, certainly. But then also, like, in terms of like, you've got the geography aspect of it. I'm no math major, obviously, as we've talked about. So, you do
use that calculator on your phone.
I do.
Real good though, Taylor.
But I'm fairly certain that Panama is closer to South America than it is to Canada, which is to say it touches South America. So like even there, like, so you won't have so much, like, it's. When you think about that, you think about, like,
it used to be part of Colombia, or did
it did indeed until we sent some gunboats there. Yeah, we being the United States, not England. You guys did plenty of your own intervention elsewhere.
Plenty of bad stuff.
Exactly. But so you because I think a lot of times when you think of 2 continents. But playing friendlies, it seems weird. See, I said friendlies again. You didn't correct me that time. But I could see that happening and them merging, especially because if CONCACAF is doing this, if UEFA is doing it, suddenly you will have CONMEBOL looking around thinking, well, we can't schedule any friendlies. Yeah. This isn't great for us.
So we have
maybe we join.
We have the CONCACAF CONMEBOL Nations League. We definitely need a new acronym.
Yeah, I think so.
You couldn't have a double barrel acronym.
I think I saw somebody tweet
the America Nation?
The League of American Nations, I think is what I saw.
You need the Caribbean nations in there as well.
The League of the Western Hemisphere. If we want to go continued aggressive American policy, the League of the Monroe Doctrine? No? League of the Roosevelt Corollary? How many more history jokes do you want?
None.
Okay.
0. So here's the other idea I have is that I grew up as an England fan, and I got very used to the schedule of, you finish your World Cup, next September, you maybe start, or soon after, you start European Championship qualifying, right? Then there's a Euros 2 years later. Yeah. Then you start World Cup qualifying. So you've got these constant 2-year cycles. I've really noticed in the US, there's this dead zone after the World Cup because there isn't a 2-year tournament that you have to qualify for, right? And even if you get invited to Copa America, there's no qualification process for that. The US doesn't have a Gold Cup qualification process. So it really does leave these friendly zones. These are now going to be competitive soccer zones. I think that's better for the US national team.
Especially better because you said a word in there that is very important. Competitive, which means FIFA sanctioned, which means you can cap tie players.
All right, so someone asked us this on Twitter, and I had to say I don't know the answer. I assume if it is like a proper CONCACAF Nations League CONCACAF tournament, then you can cap tie players. So we could cap tie people as soon as September 2018.
That would be ideal.
It also means this, that it means FIFA ranking points. So if you have a long-term goal of getting the US higher up the FIFA rankings, you get more points for playing in properly sanctioned games than you do for playing in friendlies, right? So beating Italy in a Italy's a bad example. Beating France in a I didn't mean that deliberately. That was just a mistake. And I thought that because we did beat Italy that one time, remember? So beating France... Klinsmann, Dempsey, beating France in a friendly. We beat them.
Okay.
Beating France in a friendly is only worth a very small amount of points, whereas beating Jamaica in a CONCACAF Nations League, I assume, will be worth more FIFA World Ranking points. It's better for the US in the long run.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's better for the US in the long run because if you are getting those kind of FIFA points genuinely through competitive games, that's great, because what you don't want to do is have the situation, was it 2006 when the United States were somehow like the 6th country in the world, or like number 6 in the world, and that was probably not an accurate representation of where they stood, as the 2006 World Cup proved.
It had some people very confident going into a group stage with Italy, Czech Republic, and Ghana.
And it should not have. And so we learned from that. So I'd rather have us be like...
It had Dave O'Brien. Do you remember him? He was the baseball commentator that was doing ESPN coverage. Sorry to go down this road again, but it had Dave O'Brien suggesting that Casey Keller was the best goalkeeper in the group.
Oof.
The group that included Gigi Buffon and Petr Cech in his Chelsea prime.
And the eventual World Cup champions?
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm with you there. I also wanted to clarify that I knew that we beat Italy. I just wanted to keep making you restate that introductory phrase over and over again.
Bad man, Taylor Rockwell. You're a bad man. All right, anything else? I feel like we've been very pro CONCACAF Nations League, and that isn't the vibe out there. So should we give more attention to the idea that this is a terrible thing and we shouldn't be doing it?
I mean, I guess so, if we're saying that, like, we should cover both sides for the sake of covering both sides, which I guess we are, so sure.
Like CNN?
I mean, yeah.
It's like a very bad episode of Crossfire.
Yeah, sometimes there isn't a justifiable other side. Anyway, I mean, I think the obvious argument there is it sort of is taking away freedom from the United States to schedule other games, to participate in other competitions theoretically, and instead forcing them to play CONCACAF opposition. And if it is divided into, say, 4 groups of 3, you're probably not going to get Mexico, Costa Rica, maybe Panama, maybe Honduras, who knows who else. Could be Trinidad, who knows. So then suddenly you're not playing like the stiffest of opposition, and that can lead to basically the United States staying where it is.
And I think something just occurred to me is we're assuming the US will be one of the top seeds when these groups are drawn. That may not be the case based on FIFA World Rankings when that comes around. I haven't looked at the World Rankings table because honestly I don't pay enough attention to it. But we could have been jumped by, say, Panama. Maybe not Honduras because they lost the playoff to Australia and they can't get any World Cup points. But Panama could get a bunch of World Cup points.
But even then, I would say that probably still keeps the United States as the 4th best team.
But then if it's 3 groups, then we could be drawn into a group with Mexico, for example.
Indeed, we could be, but if it's 4, then we wouldn't. And I think that's the negative part of it, is basically that there's no guarantee that you're going to end up playing like competition opposition that will help you like kind of develop and get used to those like more difficult environments when it really matters.
But it would be a nice dose of humility to have to spend more time in CONCACAF and prove that we can maybe compete, right?
I definitely think so.
And then there would be, I assume, silverware to play for. There'll be a CONCACAF Nations League champion when there are playoffs at the end of the whole thing. Final bit of news to report on this is that, as I understand it, I read this on frontrowsoccer.com, there'll be games in September that are to determine who goes in which tier.
Okay.
So maybe, you know the indoor league we play in, Score?
When you have the play-in game?
They have a game at the start of the season where they just randomly draw teams against each other. Then they look at the results and be like, you can be Division 1, you can be Division... Like, so they know we're a Division 1 team, right? We have a good team, our indoor team. So I think they will look at our results and judge how the other team does against us and put them in an according division. I'm not saying they'll run it like that. But I think they have tapped the head of Score to...
that makes sense.
to set this
Tyler. Tyler's going to be out there organizing stuff. I mean, that's one way to do it, my guess would be that it would be... like historical results and standing will probably factor into it a little bit more. And then maybe just some teams that are like if maybe teams are sort of a little bit too close and they can't call it, they'll have some playoffs. But it could mean that the US has a competitive game in September 2018. That's the other thing. It really moves up the US's competitive schedule from Gold Cup 2019 to September 2018. So I'm excited just for that. And then I'm excited for the theoretical possibilities of what's to come. Like the idea of this being used as a qualifier for the Gold Cup or even for like the World Cup or for other like competitions around the world.
I think UEFA Nations League will be a qualifier for
the Euros?
Yeah, for the Euros in some way. Like some teams can get in that way. And I think they said the same thing for the Gold Cup. There'll be a path for like the teams that win in the 3rd tier or the 2nd tier. There may be a spot available for them to play off. To get into the Gold Cup.
I think that's definitely ideal because the way it is right now, you've got these weird, like, the 2nd place and this one plays the 3rd place in that one, and then
it's a lot of regional
plays
competitions, right? There's like a Central American Championship and
which is
Caribbean
fine,
Championship.
But then there are playoffs outside of those, which is like the 3rd place team in the Central American Championship plays the 4th place team in the Caribbean whatever, and then you're all over the place and you have a bunch of different games, and you could have one.
It's harder to get there.
And you could have one team that plays 12 games and is almost qualifying for the Gold Cup and then not. And so I think...
I can't remember who it is, but that literally happened at the most recent Gold Cup. Don't try to remember it because I can't get it either.
I will not. I think it was whoever Haiti beat, or maybe it was Trinidad? I can't remember. But either way, it was like you had people missing out because of one result.
I'm going to say Trinidad. Okay, so we have some great listener questions to get to. But first, we have a great advertiser.
Let's talk about him.
It's a new one. It's fanfutsal.com. So this is fantasy football or fantasy soccer, but with a 5-a-side team. It's made really easy.
Hence the futsal?
Hence the futsal, yeah. But the even bigger thing is, it's not like you don't select a team of players. You select your team of teams.
All right.
So, for example, you select a striker, and for your striker, you select a team that you think is going to score a bunch of goals this weekend, and it's worth, 6 points per goal.
Okay.
So I picked a team this weekend. I have Manchester City up front because they're playing Leicester City. So every time Manchester City score, 6 points in the bag from me. And then like your defenders get points for clean sheets and fewer points if they concede 1 goal or 2 goals. Goalkeepers get 18 points if they keep a clean sheet. So you would choose basically a Jose Mourinho team to be in goal in fanfutsal.com.
I like that you say that, given that you did not do that this time around.
Well, I have up until, I think, 5 minutes before the games kick off to make changes.
Pro tip here, don't put Liverpool as your goalkeeper. Just throwing that out there.
I actually put Liverpool as my midfielder.
That's a good one.
This weekend, because you get some points for goals scored and some points for clean sheet, but you don't know which way it's going to go. So I've sort of split the difference by having Liverpool versus Southampton in midfield.
All right. I feel like I might have put Liverpool up top and put City in the midfield, but I guess I have my own opportunity to do so if I so choose.
Yeah, you do. Okay, so the reason we wanted to do this, the reason we were very happy to advertise Fan Futsal, is that it is a fantasy soccer game that is not gambling. It's not just fantasy sport, gambling disguised as fantasy sports.
Yep.
It's genuinely free to play. You don't have to put any money in. You play for the fun against other soccer fans, and you sort of create a community around the event. You can play in tournaments and knockouts and leagues. You can create your own with your friends, or you can join one that's open. I joined the Bumpy Pitch EPL League.
Well, there you go. Good job for you. The Bumpy Pitch EPL League.
Yeah.
All right. I think you got a double league in there, but that works. So if people are interested in getting involved or want to play for themselves, set up their own teams and the like, what can they do, Daryl Grove?
You just go to fanfutsal.com, fanfutsal.com. The link will be in the show notes, and then it's free to register. It's easy to register. Then you set up your team. And you just select 5 teams for the weekend, then you sit back and let it go. It's not complicated. That's why I like it. We don't have a lot of free time.
Nope.
TSS, we don't have time to be messing with fantasy leagues.
No, I always think I'm going to do it.
Ones.
I always think I'm going to all right, I'm going to pick my team every week. I'm going to stick with it. And then almost always within 3 weeks, I'm like, that's fine. That's fine. I don't really care anymore.
My least favorite part of early August is telling people who tweet and email us that, sorry, we won't be running a TSS fantasy league this year because we just know that we don't have time to commit to it. So we just don't do it. But fanfutsal.com is a nice, easy commitment. Also, and you can cheer when Man City score a bunch of goals.
Also because Daryl Grove is afraid. Anyway, thank you to Fan Futsal for sponsoring today's program. Daryl Grove, shall we answer some questions?
Yeah, we have. I can't even count them. There's so many listener questions to come. Let's do this in a kind of not quick take, hot take.
Sure.
What's the word? Fast on the buzzer round.
Lightning round.
Lightning round, that's the one. All right, up first, it's George Nisbet.
And I'm going to ask it because you're the defender.
Ooh,
George says, when a defender steps up to block a shot, what is the best technique to protect the goal and the body?
So I would say it's make yourself as big as possible with no holes.
Okay.
I'd also say it's about sort of keeping the correct distance, get close but not too close. You know what I'm saying? Try and meet it with your feet. And the biggest thing is, don't bite too soon.
Yeah.
Don't go sort of charging in and make a big jump at it, because if it's a good player, they'll fake the shot, dribble around you, then they have an open shot. I would also say the biggest thing is, at least in my head, get sort of square to the attacker's shooting foot so that your whole body is facing him and it's ready to adapt in either direction.
Yep.
If you approach from the side, then you're narrower than if you're fully square, right?
Yep. And I think I would add to your point about jumping and leaving your feet.
Yeah.
I think
don't do it is the point, right?
Yeah, because there's this idea that you see the footage of the heroic defender trying to clear it out with his face or whatever, and that's what you might have to do in a certain situation.
If you're already on the floor, maybe.
Yeah. But generally speaking, if you're jumping, you're wrong, because if you're just stand still and you're close enough and they try to cross that, you're going to block it anyway. So jumping doesn't really help you. On top of that, if you try to approach them to block the shot out of control, decent chance you're either going to foul them even after the shot goes. If you make
alive.
That, or make that. But if they've already gotten the shot off and then you connect with them, it's going to be a free kick, likely near the top of the box or near the goal.
Yeah.
Or more likely, you're going to approach them out of control, hands out in the air. Easily could be a handball too.
Yes,
so you kind of want to keep yourself under control.
Yep. So this is why I was very critical of Corey Evans when he considered that handball against Northern Ireland versus Switzerland.
Yep.
I didn't like that he turned his back, and that's part of the reason why he ended up conceding that penalty. If he stood square, stood his ground, he wouldn't have been in a weird position for the ball to hit him.
Agreed.
In the way that it did.
There we go. Under control, make yourself as big as you can. But
don't bite.
But don't bite.
Don't bite. Yeah. I'm really glad George asked that question, because I've never actually thought about how to defend it. I just kind of do it when we do it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think
I've never been coached is part of the reason.
And I think the thing is, if you're gonna play soccer, if you're gonna try to block a shot, accept that you might get hit in places that you don't want to be hit by a ball, but that's life. But don't turn your back. That's the other one.
Don't turn your back and don't go diving in. All right, thank you, George, for that question. Second question comes from Michael Hastings Black. His question is, if there were Wikipedia entries for the playing and coaching careers of Taylor Rockwell and Daryl Grove, what would they say? So we thought about answering this question before. This has been in the hopper for a little while. And we realized if we listed all the teams we'd played for,
boring.
It would be a boring list of teams that only people we know would have heard of.
Yep.
And no one wants to hear that. So we've sort of gone with sort of career highlights. Yeah. Is that fair to say?
So I've gone with entry not found.
404 error.
Yeah. Is that enough?
It's funny, but I need the real answer. Please.
All right, fine. If I were doing the abbreviated version, it would say that I was born and raised in Richmond, Virginia, where I played club soccer for FC Richmond, high school ball for Maggie Walker High School. I then had a limited college career because, you want to be a little bit diplomatic in your Wikipedia page. You don't want to slander yourself.
So where
limited college career at Center College in Danville, Kentucky.
Hey.
Then moved back amateur adult league here in Richmond and at SCORE, as you mentioned, the indoor facility. And then various coaching licenses, coach for FC Richmond, coach for street soccer with you.
Wikipedia, if it said various coaching licenses, an editor would go in and say, please be more specific, which coaching licenses does Taylor have?
My E and my D licenses, and then which is not saying much.
Do you have your F, or did that not exist when you did yours?
I didn't need to get it.
I think the F is newish, right?
Yes. Yeah. But also, I think when you play at a certain level, you can bypass certain levels. And so I think if you've played competitive soccer, you might even be able to, if you've played college soccer, you might even be able to skip the E license. Yeah. But I did not. I took that in Kentucky. Yeah, but I have it in Virginia and in Kentucky because that's where I first was going to be a coach.
Gotcha.
And then I've got other little ones from different clubs.
So you've got lots of Southern coaching licenses.
Basically, yeah.
So what else would be on your page? Coaching career, what would it say?
It would basically just say FC Richmond. It would say street soccer, and it would say Soccer Shots.
There we
organization
go.
With whom I currently work.
An ever-expanding Wikipedia entry. Yeah. So mine would be obviously born in England, so I've got like a weird English career.
Weird English career.
First up, like under the honours, it would say Windsor High School, West Midlands champions, right? 1995. And that would look really good because that's like being state champs, right? In the UK. Brilliant high school football team. What maybe it wouldn't say is that I was on the bench for the final for the whole game and for a lot of the season. I had a very, very good high school team that I couldn't quite crack. I got some minutes, but there were guys who were like on the books at Coventry and Villa and some really, really good players that I was nowhere near as good as.
Was there a period where you were told to be a ball boy instead of playing, or did I make that up?
There was a game where I had to be a linesman.
There it is.
Yeah. There was my worst game of all time. I was subbed out in the first half and then had to be the linesman.
Just pouring salt in that wound. You're welcome.
Terrible day. But unfortunately, that would be on my Wikipedia page.
Yep.
Other highlights of my youth career. Stourbridge Town under-17s is one of the best standards I played at. Stourbridge Town, 7th tier in the English pyramid. Right, This is a team that made the first round of the FA Cup. So properly decent non-league team in England, so I played for their U17 team.
Not gonna lie, some of this sounds like it could be Harry Potter. Like you might just be making it up, and I'm like, that organization.
At Stourbridge, I was in Hufflepuff.
There we go. You would be Hufflepuff.
I played a lot of five-a-side.
Just kidding, I would be Hufflepuff.
I played five-a-side when I went to undergrad uni. No one needs to hear about that. But when I did my masters at University College Dublin, UCD was in the Premier League of Irish Soccer. I played for their freshman team, which would be like their third-string team. I played 45 minutes for that team.
I want this segment to just be called Daryl Finds American Equivalents, because that's all this is.
Well, it's really rare, like anywhere in Europe, to be able to have a university team. They were the only university team playing in the top tier of a country at the time.
Yep.
So I played for their freshman team because as a master's student, I was 22, 23. Everyone else was like 18 or so.
You're the crafty veteran?
Yeah, I was kind of the crafty veteran. And again, I wasn't as good as the other guys, but the coach liked me, so he invited me to practice. So it was a good standard to be sort of almost playing at. So that would be on my Wikipedia page.
Good.
Then after a couple, Sunday teams in England, I moved over to the United States, where probably the best team I've played on is Richmond City FC, where we've played together. Honours would be Division 1 champs of CVSA, 2009.
I was not on that team.
And you and I have had a lot of indoor titles that we've won with Richmond City.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's pretty much what it was.
I didn't go over my silverware, but that's okay. I won the Premier with a different club other than Richmond City.
Yeah.
And I did some stuff in high school.
There we go.
And at various tournaments at club level as well.
And then coaching, it would say street soccer or current team called HPFC that you and I
constant runner-up. Yeah.
Constant runner-up, yeah. So I think that's enough about our careers. But we appreciate Michael's interest. Mike, if you have any sort of follow-up questions, we can email the answers to you privately, but I don't think anyone really wants to hear about our amateur soccer careers.
Probably not, but they might want to hear our thoughts on golden generations. Ooh, Adam Ulrich, I was wondering what your definition is of a soccer generation. Is it 4 years, 6 years, or longer? Also, what do you think makes a golden generation? I can answer the first part, or the second part if you'd like. I say the media. And I mean, that really is it, right? Like that, it is a, I feel like, and that informs my answer to the first part, but I feel like it's a construct of not always lazy journalists in the way that we say a well-organized defense. That means that they're like, oh, it's Germany, that's enough.
It means they haven't conceded in a couple of games. I don't really know why.
Exactly. And so I do think that when you look and you're like, oh, that guy's good and that guy's good and that guy's good, rather than say that guy's good and that guy's good and that guy's good, it's easier to say this is Portugal's golden generation because they have so much talent in a way they never have before.
And I think what often informs that is if they win a youth tournament.
Yep.
Right? So I feel like the U17 England team will be called a golden generation if a lot of those kids come through, because it's almost like putting expectations on a group of players because they did this thing at youth level. Now we expect you to do something at senior level. Therefore, you're a golden generation. Pressure is on. How about you deliver something?
Yeah.
Like, I think the Luis Figo generation with Rui Costa and all those guys for Portugal was called the golden generation. I think
that might be the one that I was first introduced. That's where that term came to me. That's why I said Portugal earlier.
Yeah. I think me too. So I don't think it happens in a specific number of years.
I agree.
Here's how I think it happens. It happens when essentially a cohort of players all around the same age, of notable players, all emerge at roughly the same time at a reasonably young age, so that becomes the team for a while. And I think of an England golden generation that essentially includes, I wrote this down because I checked everybody's age, people in roughly the same age bracket: Gerrard, Lampard, Michael Owen, Rio Ferdinand, John Terry, sort of David Beckham. He was a little bit older. But you know what I'm saying? Like, all those guys are roughly the same age. They're now in their late 30s, and they all played for England at roughly the same time.
Yeah.
And they were all very high-profile players. So that becomes a generation because it's like a group of what you'd say maybe 4 or 5 players that go through a team at roughly the same time together. So that's why I'm excited about the US right now, because I always talk, I know people are probably sick of hearing it now, about the Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Jonathan Gonzalez, central midfield. They're all 18, 19. Christian Pulisic could also be involved in that. It's a notable group of players around the same age. That makes a generation. Yeah. I'm not going to call them a golden generation because I actually want them to win something.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to call them a golden generation because I still have a difficult time with like isn't like technically if you're born in like 79, can't you be considered a millennial? Or if you're like there's
no, I am and I'm not.
Okay,
I was born in 79.
Then maybe it's like 80 or 81. Yes, Either way, it's like 81 up until today. That seems like a weird.
I'm officially an Xennial, where you're halfway between Generation X and Millennial.
That's my point. So like if that's a generation, which can be like 25 years, I have a hard time saying that 4 years can be a generation. I also have a hard time with it because maybe this doesn't make sense, but this is the best way I could explain it, is like if a 25-year-old wins the World. This is going to be a very exciting time for this team. If a 25-year-old wins the World Cup with a team with a bunch of 28 and 29-year-olds, but then he wins it again 4 years later, and that team is a bunch of like 25 and 26-year-olds, which part of the golden generation is he? Or did you have an 8-year golden generation?
He's an individual, and the group of players on either side of him, they're the generation.
But see, I agree with you, but then I even thinking about like the lost generation that people have been talking about recently with the U.S. national team, like you look at Bobby Wood, and he is sort of in that point where it's like, well, is he in the current generation? Is he in the lost generation? Is he in the older? Like,
I think him and Yedlin are the lost generation.
Yeah.
But it's because they're the only two that came through, right?
So I just think it's difficult because you can start to have, like, rarely are you going to have a situation like the class of 92 with Manchester United where they were all born within like 8 months of each other or whatever, like that's, and coming from the same area, like that's a very rare situation. And so I think for me it's more like you could have a golden generation that could be 2 years or it could be covering 8 years. It kind of just depends on how good your academy is.
And I'm looking at my watch and it says when Taylor mentions Man United, it's time to move on to the next question.
That works. Right, is that the first time I've done that today? There you go.
Ira Jersey asks, when did goalkeepers come about and how did the penalty box develop?
All right.
This was tough to research. I'll be honest, I started and I kind of gave up.
Did you?
Yes, but I know that you volunteered to do some extra research, so I'm going to turn it over to you for the answer, Taylor.
Sure.
When did goalkeepers come about?
It's difficult
and how
to say.
did the penalty box develop?
It's difficult to say because in 1863, when the laws of the game were first drawn up, goalkeeper was the only position that is certain to have existed at that point because
everyone else was just outfield?
There was a provision for the goalkeeper. Yeah, basically. It was.
So goalkeepers were with us since the beginning, essentially?
Sort of, because there was no specialist goalkeeper. From what I understand, it was basically anybody could be a goalkeeper.
Rush back?
Yeah, I think it was something like that.
Have you ever played that? Rush goalies? So we used to play that when we were kids. We'd like play in the field, jumpers for goalposts.
Oh, it's whoever's closest to the goal.
Whoever's closest. If you are obviously the deepest guy at the time, you're allowed to use your hands. So we played rush goalie. And basically because no one wanted to go in goal.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's how it always works.
The first keepers were rush goalies.
Well, in 1870, there was an amendment added to the laws of the game which stated the goalkeeper goalkeeper may, within his own half of play, use his hands but shall not carry the ball.
Within his own half
yes.
of play? I remember this from a Howler ad we did, right?
Yeah, so then this is where you basically had one person who was the goalie who could use his hands in his own half. Yeah.
So you could come rushing out to like the halfway line and punch it clear?
Yes, but you couldn't move once you had the ball. So once you caught the ball, and I think you may have had to catch it, you then basically couldn't move. I think, and then they changed it eventually so you could take like
basketball?
4 steps, and then it became basically you have a time period. But yeah, basically you had to catch it where you were, and then you had to like throw it off to somebody else. And
even then, in 1870, Abby Wambach was on the sidelines counting how long you'd had the ball.
Well, there was a specific person who kind of forced this change. It was 1912. They banned goalkeepers from handling the ball outside of the penalty area, and that's where I first heard of like the penalty area being brought into this. And a big part of that, this was fascinating to me, 1912 was the year that Lee Roos retired. And Lee Roos is a famous eccentric goalkeeper. He would do stuff like sit on top of the goal when the ball was at the other end of the field.
I see.
He once rented a train because he missed the team train to get to a game. He rented a train. And it cost, I think, £31, which at the time was a fortune.
1912?
Yeah, £31 in 1912 was a fortune, and he just sent it to the club. So he did lots of various...
Sent the bill to the club?
Yes, exactly, yeah. But he famously knew how to exploit the rules. So number one, what tended to happen was the goalkeeper would go to catch the ball. He would get punched or tackled or shoved off the ball because it was a fairly aggressive game. Lee Roos was the first one to give it back. So he would flatten a forward. Then he would dribble the ball down the field like a goalkeeper would, or like a basketball player would. Because if you caught it, you had to hold it. But if you just kept juggling it down the field, you could carry it all the way to midfield, then stop and hold it, and then launch an attack.
Yeah.
So he basically became famous for doing it that way, so that as soon as he retired, they changed the game so you had to stay inside your penalty area.
I love that they had to wait till he retired.
Basically,
it's like waiting until Arjen Robben retired and then saying, all right, no one is allowed to be left-footed and play on the right wing and cut inside and shoot ever again. That's a straight yellow.
Yeah, I mean, and so you will see like articles written about how like basically he forced the change into the modern game. Then you have lots of...
Is that what like a cunning plan is called a ruse?
Ooh.
It's not.
I wish it were.
It's not.
But I do wonder if that's why Roose Bolton was named Roose Bolton.
Yeah, I'm sure it was in homage to that.
Yes, I'm sure. And then you have other changes throughout history. 1992 being the other big one, which is when goalkeepers were no longer allowed to pick up back passes.
Yes, I remember that.
But in terms of where it came from, I mean, a goalkeeper's basically just always been a part of the game. There are references to it in like the 1300s, in the early origins of soccer. So it's been around for forever, but it's kind of a slowly evolving position over the years.
Okay. All right. Another question for you.
Yeah.
Brendan Massa asks, what is the ideal length of tenure for an international manager?
Yeah.
I'm going to say 50 years and you win the World Cup every year.
Exactly. I mean, okay, but actually that's a joke, but kind of a good answer, which is that as long as it's working. And I mean, I think that's the thing, is that you can have a manager who wins the World Cup or, has a really good 4-year stint, and then they do the Bruce Arena thing and they rely too much on the players that got them there and it falls down.
I think more appropriately, the Marcello Lippi thing.
Yep.
So he won the World Cup in 2006 with Italy. 2010, he brought, I think, a lot of the same players and it went less well.
Exactly. But then you can also have Yogi Low, who kind of keeps calling in new players, keeps focusing on youth, keeps trying different things, trying different player combinations. And I think that's fine. And I could see, I genuinely, as long as he keeps kind of adapting and modernizing and bringing in young players, there's no reason to get rid of him.
So to maybe put a number on Brendan's question, I would say that the ideal length of contract is 2 years.
Really?
Especially for a European coach who has Euros, then 2 years later World Cup.
That's the key there.
So essentially you get to build to the tournament, you qualify for the tournament, you go to the tournament. At the end of the tournament, then you sit down with the federation and you say, all right, let's do this again, or let's not do this again. And then you don't end up with a situation like one of the things Sunil Gulati is correctly criticised for is extending Klinsmann's contract before the 2014 World Cup, right? You should wait till the cycle ends, then you sit down and start again. Right. And I think it's like people... federations get scared of coaches leaving, and so therefore they panic and give them long-term contracts. But then not long after that, the coach's stock could rise because the team performance goes down, results go down. Then you've got to pay them out to fire them. I think maybe be braver, federations. Just go 2 years.
Coach's stock could go down.
Or just the team plays worse, therefore the coach's stock goes down in terms of we don't want you anymore. But you're on like a 5-year contract with 3 years still to go, or whatever it is. So then you need someone to buy you out. So it's better to have 2-year cycles, 2-year contracts. Remember Guardiola at the end of Barcelona? Yeah. He famously had a 1-year contract.
That's what he likes.
1-year contract, 1 year
Because I would also add that like if say Daryl Grove you have a 2-year contract with Total Soccer Show or a 4-year contract with Total Soccer Show.
I might have a lifetime contract.
But then another podcaster comes in and starts offering you stuff. If I then I'm like, never mind, here's an 8-year contract, like whatever, like. You sort of then have all the power. If you're the so if you extend it to the national, but if you extend it to the national team, there's no pressure anymore really, because either you're going to get a massive payout, or you're going to do what you want, but they're not getting rid of you because they've just paid a bunch of money to keep you.
It's called the Sven-Goran Eriksson approach.
Yes. So I think with that in mind, if you combine those two, I don't think there is a specific time period that I prefer, but I think I would rather it be shorter time periods and then they stick around for as long as works for both sides.
And I would even argue if you're the type of coach that is going to be tempted somewhere else, then maybe that's not the guy you want, right?
Or I mean, that's fine. That's the way it goes. Coaches want to challenge themselves. You can get bored, or you can want to try different things, or you can just not like a situation.
He can't take the players with him.
Nope, he cannot. Hopefully.
So we have a lot of US men's national team questions.
We sure do.
To come. And a Major League Soccer question as well.
Also that.
But first, we have an ad from FUTCHI. FUTCHI, we've mentioned them a couple of times
we have.
In the last few shows. We're very happy that FUTCHI is back with us as an advertiser.
We are. If you don't know FUTCHI, they're the makers of the highly engineered soccer rebounder that combines squash and soccer. You can play it by yourself with a partner. Daryl and I tend to play against each other. You can see those videos on the YouTubes. Or you can play against a group of people and do like a tournament edition.
And we actually did. We had Backyard FUTCHI.
We did.
Was the video that we recorded at night. We had to light it, which was kind of fun.
We did.
And we had at least 10 or 12 people from our soccer team, and we played one big FUTCHI knockout tournament, FUTCHI battle. It was absolutely great.
It was. We did it as well at the DC United.
I can't remember who won. I'd have to rewatch the video to remember who won.
I think a bunch of different people.
It wasn't me because I'd remember that.
You would, and it was not. We also did it at the DC United home opener at RFK Stadium.
Yes.
We played with like 6 or 7 people there.
That, I believe, is called Frozen FUTCHI.
Yes, it was. It was real cold. That is accurate.
Really cold.
Yes. But if you want to see, we don't have footage of that one, but if you want to see us dressed as Santa Clauses, you can find that. If you want to see us sweating through our T-shirts because it was 105 degrees, there's footage of that as well.
We should play FUTCHI in like a nice temperate time. Like in the fall.
It's not our style, baby.
We either go midsummer or deep winter.
I think, as I recall, we tried to do. Well, then we were kind of excited to do the Santa one, because it was like, at least we'll have like a bunch of layers on, and then that was the one day in December that it was like 85 degrees. And I was like, awesome, this is going to be great. I'm already sweating, and I haven't even left the air-conditioned car.
Thanks, Virginia.
Yep.
But okay, one thing I'd say about us playing FUTCHI is, and I mean this in a good way, it does get competitive. Like there have been times where we'll argue over, okay, did that land in the court? Or, you got in my way.
Never.
And I say that like it's never like turned into like a fist fight or anything, but I say that to make clear that it genuinely gets you going and you are determined to win.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is definitely true.
It is a competitive fixture, not an international friendly.
Yep. And it also makes you adapt your game because it's as much about strategy as it is about soccer ability, because there's definitely the people who want to volley that ball as hard as they can and like, haha, I hit it well. And then it's like, yep, and it bounced out of bounds because you hit it too hard. So you've also got to incorporate the strategy in there.
All right, so if you want to buy one for Christmas, then you can get a very nice discount. We'll put the link in the show notes. You go to playfuchi.com, but we'll put the link specifically in the show notes. There's already a discount right now that FUTCHI are offering. I think it's $50 off right now. You'll get a further $20.17 off of that. I've checked. I've gone and put the code in to make sure this works. If you enter TSS2017, TSS 2017, that code gets you an extra $20.17 off of a FUTCHI rebounder.
There we are. So thank you to FUTCHI for sponsoring today's show. Back to the questions.
Back to the questions. All right, who's up next? It is Anthony Short. Anthony Short asked a really interesting question that got me thinking. Okay, he asked, what are your thoughts on a shorter schedule in Major League Soccer? I'm going to avoid any obvious wordplay on Anthony Short's name. Which, honestly, I saw that question first and I was like, what is this guy talking about? But then he offered an explanation. Are you ready for the explanation?
I am.
Anthony says, if you are going to change the schedule, as for example, Eric Ronaldo's been talking about like MLS should go to a European-style schedule, right? We might want to focus more on duration. I am of the opinion that shortening the schedule might have a better advantage. Leagues like Uruguay, Ecuador, and Peru, for example, only have a 15-week competition in their top divisions. They argue that this 4.5-month league gives the teams more time and opportunities to play in other international tournaments. South America has a ton of cross-league tournaments. Creating tournaments where MLS could have more playing opportunities with other CONCACAF teams, or maybe even creating tournaments where MLS could face CONMEBOL teams, would greatly increase the competition. So, Taylor, what do you think? What are your thoughts on a shorter schedule in Major League Soccer?
Well, I know we talked it out yesterday, and we kind of came up with an idea. We didn't mean to,
right? We just kept talking.
Yeah, we came up with an idea that like could be interesting, but I don't necessarily think that this would work because a big part of that is that Brazil has so many clubs concentrated in specific areas that you can kind of have that state championship and then have the National League.
Yeah,
as well.
So to give people the background on that, Brazil do the, what's it called, the Brasileiro Campeão? Oh, I can't remember. But the Serie A and Serie B and Serie C, where it's an actual like proper league competition. And then they also have the state championship where Brazilian teams will play just within their state. And those two sort of run, I think the state championship is earlier in the year and then the league schedule is later in the year and there's some overlap. So the thing we talked about last night was maybe you shorten up MLS so it's like just one half of the year. And the second half of the year is not state championships because there's not enough teams, but regional championships in American soccer. I like this idea.
I mean,
so before you knock it down, let's build it up.
No. Yeah, I'm not going to knock that aspect of it down. But yeah, basically the idea would be that you still have Major League Soccer, and then maybe this is even a way to like do relegation promotions, sort of, in the sense that you could have regional competition. So you could have like the East Coast, like Southeast Coast or whatever you want to do, where it's like DC United, Richmond Kickers, Charleston Battery,
Atlanta, Orlando,
NCFC, North Carolina FC, yeah.
You could have a really good Southeast Championship. You could have a really good Northeast Championship. You could have a Midwest Championship, then a West Coast Championship. I actually think this could work.
Yeah, and so then basically that would allow like Major League Soccer teams to play against USL, NPSL maybe as well, NASL too.
NASL,
so you've got like everybody playing against everybody there.
What if
then
you
also have
expanded
an
it
MLS
out?
season.
What if you expanded it out and then Liga MX teams get involved and Canadian teams get involved?
That's where I start to think that's probably not going to work.
Why is that?
Because I think you don't like the idea of like, oh, we have Copa Lib, and like, yeah, the Copa Lib is essentially CONCACAF Champions League. We already have that going on, and so the idea of like taking a time off to play various competitions against other leagues, that then suddenly becomes like weird glorified friendlies that we're doing for the sake of doing friendlies against other leagues.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. If an actual serious thing was remember the Interliga from I think like sometime in the 2000s where a few Mexican teams would play a few MLS teams, but no one really took it seriously. Right. You don't want that, right? You don't want a tournament that no one takes seriously. But if there was a way to make it where you would essentially need the cooperation of Liga MX to be like, all right, we're going to have a light schedule in these months and we're going to play this actual tournament where we all focus. Like, this is our main thing. You know what I'm saying?
But see, I'm still... Because if you're trying to fold that in with a regional tournament, then the region is going to be Mexico. That doesn't allow like Liga MX teams to like play against New York or Seattle or anybody like that. So it's still that's where I feel like it would have to stay within the United States.
Okay. All right, so let's just take that idea then. So why do you not think that this regional within the United States thing could work? I mean, I think one of the problems with MLS.
I think the idea of playing what I was objecting to initially was that I don't like the idea of shortening the Major League Soccer schedule to then play random games against random opposition in like trying to create a tournament. I do think the regional one could work. I don't know if clubs would love it because I think Major League Soccer wants to protect its we only play against each other. We're that D1 status.
I think that's the reason I like it, is that it would kind of stop MLS doing that. I also would argue, I mean there's some problems with MLS right now with the whole Columbus Crew thing. Go to savethecrew.com, please. But there's also a problem that the season genuinely is too long, right? It kind of sags in the middle, especially in those summer months. It's not just the summer months that make it do it. It's because it's the middle of the season where the early season excitement has worn off, the playoff stuff hasn't happened, and you've just got a long old season where you're playing teams too many times. If you shortened MLS into, I don't know, like a 16-game schedule or just Eastern Conference just played Eastern Conference teams, Western Conference played Western Conference teams, shorter season, straight to the playoffs, you maybe make it more exciting because it doesn't drag on so long. And then if USL did the same, NASL did the same, it's easier for them. And then the other half of the year, they do this regional tournament where everybody plays each other. I think that would add variety and interest to the league. It would be like an apertura and a closera, except like you'd have the opening was just league-wide and the closing is region-wide.
Yep. I think the only problem with that, because I like that idea a lot too, of like you play everybody home and away in your conference, and then maybe only like the top 4 teams from each conference go to the playoffs, so it's even shorter playoffs. Yeah. But then the problem is you really don't have a situation outside of MLS Cup where DC United plays LA or where LA plays New York. And I feel like that's not a thing the league is ever going to want to do.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because then you're never going to get those big marquee names playing against each other, and you're also not going to have that, like, it's going to be less of a draw, basically, because you're taking away opportunities to travel around the country.
All right. So the only other way to do it would be to have the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference, and then still have fewer games, but have some crossover conference games as well. That's a possibility, but it gets kind of logistically complicated.
I mean, you could do a thing where it's like basically you play everybody once a season, and then the next year, if you had the home game in 2017, then you have the away game in 2018, and you go back and forth like that. Again, I think Major League Soccer wouldn't love that because everybody wants to say you go back to the days of the Galaxy having Beckham, Donovan, and Robbie Keane. Everybody wants to be able to watch that team.
Yeah. So that's why televisions were invented.
Well, yes, but also clubs are going to want that match day revenue of people paying extra money to go see David Beckham. Basically. Okay, so that's the other issue.
There are plenty of reasons it couldn't happen, but I would like the idea of. It doesn't destroy the MLS single entity system, but it does mean that those clubs then have to exist outside of Major League Soccer and go and compete against USL, NASL, and other teams.
And I would like to add here, because I bet we're going to hear about this, is that I'm aware that US Open Cup, the way it currently exists, is that you do kind of have that regional competition where you tend to stay in an area to limit travel costs. But I think the difference here would be that it wouldn't be a one-off match against one of those teams in that area. And you're playing everybody.
And also, if we're honest, MLS teams don't take US Open Cup seriously enough because it happens during the MLS season, and therefore they want to protect their players from an already grueling schedule. They give their sort of more tired, more famous players the game off in the US Open Cup until the later rounds.
And I think also if you're looking at development of soccer from a broader perspective, you're going to have more people going to a Richmond Kickers game if DC United is coming into town, or if another MLS franchise is coming into town. People are going to be excited about that, and excited about the possibility of winning a division that has upper tier talent in it. And so I think that works as well because you're going to get more fans coming out. That means more money. That means more revenue. That means better quality of players, better quality of facilities. Could do a lot.
And how about just the excitement factor of, you get hyped for MLS season, then it's, it's shorter, then it's over, you get hyped for playoffs. Then second half of the year, take the summer off. Like you should. And then second half of the year, you get hyped for the regional tournament. So it's got 2 fresh starts instead of 1.
I like it.
Yeah. All right. So thank you, Anthony, for a genuinely, surprisingly interesting question.
Yeah. I mean, because at first I was like, oh, this is too gimmicky. I don't like that idea. But regionals,
yeah. Ooh, okay. So up next, Guy Yedwab has a question. You ready for this?
I am.
If it turned out we were actually playing the Gold Cup this summer and the two of you, that's me and you, were named to be permanent head coach, I mean, good choice. And for some reason, the Federation told you that USA v Portugal team was the core of the team and it was the system going forward, the 4-1-4-1. Which of the old guard would you add back into the starting 11 and who would need to step aside? So I'm going to assume everyone has the US starting 11 that faced Portugal kind of in their head right now, so we don't have to name everybody. What you got, Taylor?
Kind of the way I chose to look at this was basically if you have more caps than your age, that would make you a veteran of the U.S. national team. Because what I don't want to do is rule out a player who's 28 but has only had 6 caps.
All right, well, let's just say anyone who's an established US player who wasn't playing in that Portugal game, who do you bring back?
Really, it's 2 that are obvious to me, and those are Christian Pulisic and Jeff Cameron. I think those are the 2 that I would continue to include right away. I consider them to be the old guard. And then I do still think, even with what we said about some of the differences we saw in that team against Portugal, I would still bring in Michael Bradley and Josie Altidore.
I did the same, but kind of hesitantly. And the more I thought about it, the more it kind of made sense.
Yeah.
Right, so my 11, though, still has Matt Miazga partnering John Brooks at centre-back. Even though there's a very strong argument Cameron's the better player, I kind of just think I'm ready for Miazga and Brooks, but with Cameron on the bench ready to go. Right? I also, after much deliberation, put Michael Bradley in essentially the Danny Williams role that was played against Portugal.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is let me rephrase this maybe. I think I would have Pulisic in as my starter. I think I would probably have Cameron in there. I don't know if I would have Bradley and Josie as starters in that team. I think I might just because I really enjoyed the step. Yeah, so I think I would probably have Josie Altidore back in there because I would like to see him play with some younger players and see if he does a good job of mentoring. Or
Bobby Wood, maybe.
Or Bobby Wood. And then Michael Bradley, maybe I don't have him starting right now because I'd like to see who else can do that role and do a different type of that role. I've
just realised we had a really good conversation about Michael Bradley, but it wasn't into microphones. It was just a chat that we had. And the thing I think I hit on was we loved the way the US played against Portugal, especially the way that midfield played. And we talked a lot on the review show about how Danny Williams would step out of the number 6 role, be more aggressive and go after people and wouldn't back off and keep doing that thing that Michael Bradley does that we don't like. I would give Michael Bradley the chance and say, all right, we're playing this 4-1-4-1. It's kind of we're aggressive in midfield about going after the ball and we counter-attack fast. We don't slowly pass the ball around. You are a talented player, right? No one can argue Michael Bradley is not a super talented player and kind of a leader of men. I'm going to give you a chance to play in this system, Michael. So don't sit back. Don't sort of be passive. Don't let guys just come past you. Go after people the way Danny Williams did and go for it. You're going to have Adams and McKennie in front of you and go for it, Michael Bradley. I'd give him the chance to do that.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's where I am too, because he still is going to be involved in this U.S. national team, whether or not you want him to be.
Yeah.
He will be. I don't think that you're getting rid of him. I don't think you're getting rid of Josie Altidore either. I have questions about them now, bigger questions than I've ever had before.
But I'll give him the opportunity to prove it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I would do is, so the wings against Portugal were Tyler Adams, and he said Tony Adams, the old Arsenal player. Tyler Adams on one side, and it started with Juan Agudelo on the other, right? So I'd move Tyler Adams into central midfield, and I'd put Kellen Acosta back on the bench, and I'd go Paul Areola on the right wing, and Christian Pulisic on the left wing.
Yep.
That is a pacey, aggressive pair of wingers.
Yeah, if you're sticking with that aggressive approach, then I think that makes sense to me. I could be down for that.
Yeah.
And then the only other question mark I had was about goalkeeper, because we saw Bill Hamid, we saw Ethan Horvath. Ethan Horvath definitely did not do much to improve his stock. I'd say Bill Hamid didn't hurt it, but he didn't really have that many opportunities. He did have that one that he sort of like punched up in the air and then had to backpedal and catch. So again, that's
parried and I remember what you're saying.
I mean, but I think he could have done better with that one. He probably didn't mean to do what he did.
Zach Steffen came at best of all the goalkeepers.
Right, and so that's my point. That I genuinely don't know what I would do. I don't know if I would call him one of those two.
Tim Howard or Brad Guzan?
Brad Guzan is the one.
Ramondo?
I think Brad Guzan is the one that if I were going to call back any of the older guard, it's probably him, just because we've had lots of questions about Howard's distribution. He is also significantly older than Brad Guzan is. Same for Nick Raimondo. So I think if I were going to bring back an old guard goalkeeper, it would be Brad Guzan. I still don't have that much confidence in our goalkeeper, though, at that point.
I take your point, and I kind of agree, but for a Gold Cup, I wouldn't bring back a veteran. I'd just take a gamble on Zach Steffen. Honestly, I'd take a gamble on Ethan Horvath or Bill Hamid quite happily right now, because why not give them a tournament to play in?
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
I literally have a question mark at left back when I did my 11. You see it on my piece of paper? Because I'm not sure Eric Lehigh's the guy. I'm not sure Villafaña's the guy. And you can kind of call Villafaña old guard-ish, right? So I would just go with a fresh face at left back, be it Brandon Vincent or Danny Acosta or someone else for the 2019 Gold Cup.
Yeah,
or should we just pencil DMB in there right now?
I mean, I would say I put Villafaña in the same thing as Michael Bradley, which is sort of like, prove to me that you can do it, prove to me that you can make it work, and if you can't, then we'll bring in somebody else. But I don't know if I trust any. I mean, I don't necessarily trust Villafaña either, but I don't know if continuing to just throw people in there and see what happens is the thing I want to see either.
Left back's still the spot.
And then DeAndre Yedlin at right back.
Yeah,
I don't know if we mentioned that one yet, but that's obvious.
He's just there, right? Okay. So we hope we answered Guy's question there. And maybe the Gold, in a weird way, the CONCACAF Nations League means the Gold Cup actually will start in September.
There you go.
Yeah, so it'll be faster than we think. Final question on today's show comes from Matt Olivo. It's also about the US men's national team. You ready, Taylor? Matt says, let's say I agree with your point that the US men's national team roster will be a gradual evolution between now and 2022, meaning we don't just pick our 11 for 2022 now and hope they play together for 5 years, okay? What's the starting 11 and formation slash basic tactical concept, if that's not too much to ask, for the following? And then he lists the next 5 tournaments: 2019 Copa America, 2019 Gold Cup, 2021 World Cup qualifying, 2021 Gold Cup, and 2022 World Cup.
So basically, write a 400-page book about all the possible iterations of what could happen tactically and in terms of player development, and then figure it out in a 5-minute segment?
So, here's the thing we'll say, Matt. We're going to answer this question, but we can't answer it in the way you asked, because we can't give you our starting 11 and tactics for 5 different US teams going forward.
No, and to be honest,
it would take a whole show or more, or some sort of book.
It would also be pointless, I think. And I don't mean to say that question is pointless. It's just more so how many times have we seen that article written in, say, 2011 or late 2010 about here's what the 2014 World Cup squad could look like, and then so often maybe 4 or 5 players are in there. Maybe
Gael Agbusamande started.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that's a thing that you have to take into consideration, that we could throw together a theoretical World Cup 2022 roster, but I don't know how many of those people are still going to be around. You got to incorporate injuries and what happens in the length of their career and young players coming through.
Okay, so in the spirit of answering Matt's question, I think what we should do is take the 11 we agreed on from Guy's question. Right, so we have basically what would be our starting 11 for if the Gold Cup was next year, and kind of add and subtract some of the fresh faces coming through for the various tournaments. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if there was a 2019 Copa America and we sent the A side, I'm going to say that right now I would pick basically the team we just named for the Gold Cup.
So you'd have Brooks and Miazga in there, right?
Yeah, I mean, and maybe Jeff Cameron, but like if I'm picking 4 centre-backs, then one of those guys is... They're all in the squad, essentially, right? Okay. So at the same time, what if there's a 2019 Gold Cup and we're sending the B team? Because that's the interesting part, right? So for me, that's where I'm calling up the World Cup U20 team, right? My Gold Cup B team for 2019, because the A team is off in Copa America, is going to be the likes of Brooks Lennon, Justin Glad, Eric Palmer-Brown. Maybe you bring in sort of maybe someone like Olasunde, who's at Manchester United. You know what I'm saying? Danilo Acosta. Marlon Fossey. Maybe that's when we start getting those guys in to that Gold Cup team. Christian Roldan, if he isn't with the A team, he's going to be with my Gold Cup B team. Yeah. All right?
The only like little wrinkle I would add to that is I think we joked about this yesterday. I joked about this yesterday that you find sometimes players like Dax McCarty who is like never going to be like your out and out starter for the U.S. national team, but he's also kind of because he's guaranteed to be your like backup. He also doesn't get as many minutes as some of like the C squad because you're trying to see what those guys can do. You kind of already know what he can do.
He's stuck in the middle kind of.
And I don't want to have that. So I feel like what I would do is like if you're definitely going to start Michael Bradley, if he proves he can do that stepping job, then in the Gold Cup, I probably start Danny Williams. Or
so you have that first 10 minutes.
Yeah, so you sort of have like your subs from Copa America go into that Gold Cup squad.
So we send Bradley and Jonathan Gonzalez and they can fight it out to start at Copa America. And then at Gold Cup, we start Danny Williams. I've actually just realized I'd maybe rather do it the other way around and have Jonathan Gonzalez start at the Gold Cup and have Danny Williams as Bradley's backup at the Copa.
Well, no, but see, you're missing my point. My point is that if Danny Williams is Bradley's backup and he never plays there, then I'd rather have him play in the next tournament, which is the B squad. So I'd rather him go to Copa America as Bradley's backup, or Danny Williams goes and Jonathan Gonzalez is Danny Williams' backup, and then in the next tournament, whoever is the backup gets to start. And whoever's the third tier one gets to be the backup at that tournament. That's where I am with it.
You have to put all of this on a board so people can follow your selections.
Yeah.
All right, then after that Gold Cup, I'm going to assume we win 2019 Copa America and we win the 2019 Gold Cup.
Obviously.
Good job, everybody.
Yep.
Then what do you do for 2020/2021 World Cup qualifying? The answer is you just pick your strongest team, right? And anyone who's impressed in the Gold Cup has a shot at it, but the A team, the Copa America team, is essentially your team.
I think so.
Yeah? Fair? Okay, this is where it gets interesting to me. The next one on Matt's list is the 2021 Gold Cup. So we're projecting pretty far into the future here, right? It's like 3.5 years into the future. But I think this is, for me, where the likes of Andrew Carlton and Chris Durkin and maybe Josh Sargent should already be in the team. Maybe he would have been on that 2019 Gold Cup team. Yeah?
What I was going to say is that I think you at this point, you're kind of looking at a few positions that I think are really open now, but will definitely be open after that 2019 Copa America Gold Cup. And I think it's left back, goalkeeper, and forward. And it really could be if you have a player burst through and they're a 17-year-old and suddenly they're starting for a Bundesliga team and they're up top.
Well, of course, yeah, there's always going to be someone we don't know about, right?
Well, I guess, but that's what I mean, though.
Were you specifically talking about Sargent?
Yeah, because I kind of like Josh Sargent right now, it would be difficult for me to say who I really think should be the starting striker for the U.S. national team. Josie Altidore has his issues. Bobby Wood has his issues. Josh Sargent is very young. You've got Jordan Morris in there in competition. But it's tough for me to say who exactly, and that's where I feel like you could sort of have it rotating unless somebody really elevates their game in the next couple of years.
But roughly what I'm saying to you is the U17 World Cup guys, I think they'll be sort of ready to play in a tournament for the 2021 Gold Cup. So my 2021 Gold Cup would have Chris Durkin in it and Andrew Carlton in it.
Yeah.
Those guys. Tim Weah.
I'll agree with you for sake of argument. It's just I still have that trepidation about a U17 squad, like a majority of them even making it to that next level, because so often it ends up being like
I understand the future is hard to know, but we're just guessing at sort of what's going to happen here.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
I think we just started this by saying there's no way to know. Yes. We don't want to pick a squad in 2022, and then now that's kind of what we're doing.
What we have to do, right? But we assume Andrew Carlton's going to make it, because let's cross our fingers.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, and then 2022 World Cup, we obviously just pick the best team. That's all there is to it.
Yep.
We pick the best team for the 2022 World Cup, and we sit back on Thanksgiving and watch that World Cup happen.
Yes. So 2022
it still feels weird to say, right?
Yes, it does. 2022, we've got 4.5 years essentially. So then, if you look at it, so really, if you're a 14-year-old,
no, we have 5 years from today. Basically.
Excuse me. So if you're a 14-year-old or a 13-year-old striker, go push yourself. Same thing left back, same thing goalkeeper. Because, I genuinely think that you could see a player that we have not ever talked about start for the United States in 2022.
Of course.
At least forward, left back.
Yeah, that's why we don't know. I feel like you keep making this point that we don't know. We obviously don't know, right? You could just make up a regen name and say, Steve Fox. Steve Fox is going to be the defensive midfielder.
But see, that's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is that I think with all of the other positions, we have a lot of depth, or at least a decent enough amount of depth that, we have a bunch of scrappy players who could play wide. We've got a bunch of disciplined midfielders. We've got a bunch of scrappy midfielders. We've got some good technical. We've got some good attacking players. I just feel like if you said who is our out-and-out best left back right now, I would have some question marks. Same thing for the forwards, same thing with goalkeeper.
I feel like there's a prophecy somewhere about the left back who was promised, and there'll be certain signs
that's the final piece.
That mean it's coming. Yeah, when winter comes, the left back who was promised will emerge.
And so what I mean to say is that if you forced me to do a who is your starting 11 in 2022, I would still have some names in other positions. I would have question marks in those 3 spots, and I'm probably Josh Sargent at forward with a question mark next to it.
Yeah, of course.
But that's where I'm sort of like that's a question mark for me now up until 2022, whereas some of the other ones aren't question marks up until 2022.
Okay. Hey, this is Daryl here, cutting in with not exactly a correction, but more of a suggestion. The left back of the future that we might be talking about could be George Bello. He's only 15. He's already been sort of in camp with the US under-17s. I know he's playing up an age group with the Atlanta United Academy U19s. He is in the Total Soccer Show scouting network. So George Bello is the name to keep an eye on for future left back. No pressure, George. Got it. But again, Steve Fox could emerge and take someone's spot.
I like that name. Fox in the box.
We'll be saying, this Tyler Adams needs to get out of this team.
Yeah.
It's Steve Fox's team now.
Probably.
All right, thank you to everybody for the questions. If you'd like to ask us a question, it's totalsoccershow.com/questions. We also have scouting reports, Taylor.
We do.
All right.
Indeed, we have 5 reports to get to today, Daryl Grove, starting with Will Herson scouting Ryan Sessegnon, a 17-year-old English fullback at Fulham.
Part of the golden generation?
Sure. It's been a bad month for Sess. Fulham have only earned 1 point in their last 4 games. During that time, the formation has shifted around a bit, with Sess at left back in a 4-4-2 and at left midfield in a 3-5-2, 3-6-1. Yes, Daryl Grove?
I'm just realising that maybe it was his twin brother, Steven Sessegnon. No, he's got a twin brother, I can't remember his name, who actually went to the U17 World Cup.
There you go.
And Ryan stayed behind and played for Fulham.
Exactly. Yes. Ryan Suarez, I think it is, Suarez, has now returned from injury and may take that defensive spot, which means Sess will likely be pushed further up the wing. Will says many Fulham fans see Sess's future at the wing, by which he means the 4 boozy guys he talked to after the Wolves game.
Many people are saying. Jonathan Holgram is scouting Alex Iwobi, the 21-year-old Nigerian winger for Arsenal. Jonathan says Iwobi scored a brace as Nigeria came from behind to beat Argentina 4-2. I didn't know this. In a friendly in Russia. The Argentinian starting 11 featured Mascherano, Otamendi and Banega in defence and Dybala, Aguero and Di Maria in the attack. This was no slouch Argentinian side, and the result was Jonathan looking forward to watching the Super Eagles in the World Cup next summer.
That's the beauty of the scouting network.
Yeah, it is.
It keeps hope alive. Jeff Markman scouting Reiss Nelson, 17-year-old English midfielder for Arsenal. Reports indicate Nelson had a solid international break with the England U19s, who sit atop their qualifying group after 3 victories.
Go on, England U19s.
Nelson played 79 minutes at right wing and nearly scored in a 6-0 win against the Faroe Islands, and then played 88 minutes in a 2-1 victory over Iceland.
You know who did score against Faroe Islands?
Who's that?
Rhian Brewster. Got 4 goals. Do you remember? That was from a scouting report last week.
You happy about that?
Yeah, I am.
Nelson should have a chance to see the field for Arsenal in Europa League play next week, as the Gunners, having already secured advancement from the group stage, travel to Cologne for a tasty Thanksgiving matinee.
I'm sure that's how all the Arsenal players will be referring to.
Yes.
Ryan Marzak is scouting Pione Sisto, the 22-year-old Danish winger for Celta Vigo. Oh, I know a game that Pione Sisto played in recently.
Yep.
Ryan says Pione had a vital international break with Denmark, qualifying for the World Cup at Ireland's expense. In the first leg, Sisto wasn't a huge factor, though he did miss a golden opportunity. He got an angry glare from Christian Eriksen for that. I can't imagine that, but I guess that's a thing. In the second leg, however, he got a brace of assists, nutmegged an Irish defender and helped Denmark win 5-1. So, Ryan says, he will now have something to do next summer.
There we go.
I bet you Pione Sisto has a World Cup moment. You know what I'm saying? There'll be one amazing goal or one amazing burning of a fullback, and everyone will be like, oh, who's this guy?
Yeah.
And someone will be like, you should have been listening to Total Soccer Show. You would have heard all about him.
Indeed. Ryan Marzak, will probably be there to report that for us. I feel like maybe...
But you think he's going to Russia?
He said he's got something to do next summer.
Oh.
I mean, no, he's going to be scouting. He's going to be watching for Sisto, would be my guess. But maybe our next round of scouting assignments should be players who are potentially going to the World Cup.
Yeah.
So for depressed people who don't have a team to root for anymore, because I've seen a bunch of people tweeting my first team was the USA and my second team was Italy. Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. So we should have signed people like a Peruvian player, for example. We haven't mentioned that, but Peru beat New Zealand and are going to the World Cup. We now have a full field of World Cup teams.
Jefferson Farfan. I believe he scored the winner.
You seem shocked that he was starting. Is it? And the way you said it was like he was 50 years old. He's 33.
He just feels like he's been around forever. He does. He feels like he's been around for the longest time. I enjoyed it.
Oh, so on that note, though, the World Cup draw, I believe, is December 1st. Mm-hmm. So we'll have some content around that. Obviously, we'll watch it and give some sort of reaction. They will draw the World Cup groups on December 1st.
Yes.
There's an obvious element of sadness to it, but we're still going to be interested in what happens.
Absolutely. I did want to add, though, I loved seeing all the stories about that the New Zealand team were awoken at 3 a.m. by a massive wave of fireworks and then a military flyby by 3 fighter jets. Yep.
And didn't Peru declare a national holiday the day after?
I would assume so.
So everybody gets a day off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well done, Peru. Congratulations. Josh Dollar scouting Blake Bodily, 19-year-old American midfielder at the University of Washington. The Pac-12 just released their end-of-year awards, and Blake was awarded Freshman of the Year for the conference and was the only freshman to make the first team All-Pac-12. He and Washington now face local rival Seattle University in the first round of the NCAA playoffs.
Or the play-ins, as I call them.
Yes.
Yeah. VCU are in the tournament.
Yeah, they are.
They are a 16 seed. So not so good. But if they win and Wake Forest win in the second round, that will be the matchup. So really tough game for VCU. I know all this from doing the Top Draw Soccer Show.
I had a feeling.
With Travis Clark. Yep. I can't say that I knew it before I researched that show. Thank you to Will, to Jonathan, to Drew, to Jeff, to Ryan, and to Josh for today's scouting reports. More assignments are on the way if you signed up recently. Send me an email, Daryl, D-A-R-Y-L, at TotalSoccerShow.com. If you have itchy feet, meaning you are waiting for your scouting assignment and I've been slow sending it, email me. I'll get it to you as fast as I can. I kind of have a couple of days off over the weekend, so I'll be able to really get to it. Yep. I'm going to spend my days off doing some work.
I like it.
If you'd like to sign up for the TSS Scout Network and support the Total Soccer Show, please go to TotalSoccerShow.com/join. Link will be in the show notes. If you subscribe at $10 a month or higher, we guarantee to answer one listener question per month on the Total Soccer Show. Of yours, obviously.
Indeed.
Taylor Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, friendo.
Listeners, new one. Thank you for listening. Oh no. I'm going to make a quick exit after this then.
Just heads or tails.
So we have already recorded Friday's show. Yeah. It is in the can, so I know what's coming. Friday's show will be our Ask the Ref show. We took listener questions for Scott Zawadzki, official referee consultant to the Total Soccer Show. That show will be published on Friday where Scott will answer all of your questions. It was good, right? We recorded it. I enjoyed it. I think it's going to be a good show.
Indubitably.
All right, thank you for listening.
I've been watching Arrested Development again. The Tunnel of Love, indubitably. Yep.
Thank you for listening, and you'll hear from us again on Friday. Oh, and then again, sorry, I know I'm banging on. After the weekend, we're going to talk probably North London derby, maybe Rome derby. There's another big derby as well, the Madrid derby, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid. Mm-hmm. We get back to thumbs up, thumbs down because there's some soccer to watch this weekend.
That's a weird thumbs up, thumbs down, but yes.
Well, I'm holding a pen at the same time.
And very little ink on your hands this time around. Well done.
Very little, meaning there's still some, right?
Of course.
On the right hand.
Of course.
All right.
It wouldn't be a recording session without Daryl Grove inevitably writing on himself.
All right, listeners, thank you for listening. We always appreciate you, and we'll talk to you again soon.